Narayanam namaskritam naram chaiva narottamam daivam saraswatim vyasam tato jayodhira nashna pareshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavati utamashoki bhaktir bhavati naistiki nigama kapaturgaritam padam shukam namaskritam naram jivata bhagatam rashamanam mahora horisikabhur Krishna sadhama bhagate dhammagiri karona stadishamashad paraniko dinodidam Tamapi adabhishuta vishudam vibhusim hapiyanam varam prakyayido amaram sankleshana vanamusandi nanyataham. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jigapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhikanta Namostate Jayatam Sharito Bhango Mamanir Matiragati Matsavasha Param Boja Raja Madana Mohanam Seeman Rasarasaram Bibam Sipada Kirsan Vinashanopiku Vanasriya Sanam Divyad Vrindarani Kapadumada Srimad Ratnagara Shimashanishto Shri Sri Radha Shila Govindadevo Prestadabihi Sevamanashmanami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Chaji Garitaya Krishnaya Govinaya Namo Namaha Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Raduja Mangalam Padiri Kaksho Mangalayatano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Vidmahi Vishnu Padni Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sare Sare Hari Priya Namastubhyam Dhyayanire Tapta Kanchana Gonangi Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vishavanasute Devi Pranamani Hari Priya Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Vidmahi Vishnu Padni Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Good morning, Jean. Good morning, Brent. Good morning, Govinda Dev. Govinda Dev and I, as well as Rob and some others, were on our normal Tuesday night conference call last night. Some very, very good ideas were generated out of that, principally emanating from Govinda Dev, Mr. GD himself. Thank you for that. Rob texted me earlier from Zoom saying that the meeting was locked. I don't know how, I must have hit the locked by mistake, and I went and hit unlock, but I haven't seen him reappear in the waiting room. So we may not have Rob over on Zoom today, nor perhaps his comments at the end either. This is Wisdom Wednesday. It'll be our last class. I'm just looking at a peacock out there in the pre-dawn hours. He's at the window, the basement window, looking in. This will be our last class for a couple of weeks. Next week, we'll be focused on getting ready for the Color Fest. Myself, particularly, I'll be honing my rap skills. I don't really know what future there is for a 76-year-old Hare Krishna rapper, but we're going to find out, putting a lot of rehearsal, a lot of effort into the rap songs, and particularly the responsive chanting that I hope to encourage the audience to do along with me. I've got a couple of DJs that'll be part of the program on the 25th and 26th. Junior Miranda and Krishanto, who I know from back 2012 in Los Angeles. So I'm hoping that there's a place in the world for a 76-year-old Hare Krishna rapper. As my body breaks down almost daily, different things go wrong, I keep in mind Krishna's promise that the future will be better than the past. That the best things are out in front of us. And I'm thinking, if the best things are out in front of me, they've got to be in terms of talent, developing new talents and skills. They're certainly not in terms of going to new levels physically. Almost every day I'm slipping physically. It's amazing how much the decline is precipitous at this age. But there are still many things I can do intellectually. There's many things I can do with my mind and my will. Write books would be one of them. Should we get the right management team here to take that burden off of Bobby and myself? She could do her painting. I could write books. and especially create new poems, the whole area of creativity is wide open. As the physical body declines, it's actually a door of opportunity that opens for more creativity. So we'll see if Krishna paves the way for a brilliant future, in which comparison to which all the achievements of the past will pale. Our topic today, carrying over from yesterday, is setting your heart primarily and principally, prioritizing your heart on the kingdom of God and on God's goodness, and then having the faith and trust that everything else that you need will be supplied to you. Krishna is the fulfiller of all desires, even desires of which we're not yet aware, incipient, latent desires. Krishna's in your heart. He's closer than a brother. He knows even those desires which have not yet risen to the forefront of your consciousness. There's nothing that's impossible for those who keep God first place. But how do we do that? How do we focus? How do we become single-minded in prioritizing Krishna's goodness and Krishna's service? And the answer, of course, is it's all made extremely easy through something called sadhu sangha, the association of devotees. We had the sadhu sangha retreat here last year in May over Memorial Day weekend. Indradumna Maharaj organized it. Various gurus and sannyasis came, such as, of course, Indradumna Maharaj himself, Jayadvaita Maharaj, Kadamba Kana Swami, who just departed for the spiritual world the other day on March the 9th. We had Giriraj Swami, we had B.B. Govinda Swami, we had Satyananda Swami from Germany. Many, we had Madhava, who's not a Swami, but a great chanter. We had Gauravani, we had Achyuta Gopi. Lots and lots of talented chanters. It was called Sadhu Sangha. So on the morning of the last day of the retreat, they called me up on stage and thanked Bhai Bobby and I for hosting the Sadhu Sangha and for working with the organizers, Govinda Charan and his wife. And they wanted me to say a word or two. And I didn't want to take much time. And after all, the main relationships there were between the disciples and their gurus, and I didn't want to intrude. So I just said, I've got 14 words to share with you, and I hope that you'll repeat them robustly as I call them out. I said the whole weekend can be summed up in these 14 words. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastahai, Lavamata Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastahai. This is the statement from Chaitanya Maria. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastahai. The perfection of human life is to attain the association of other saintly persons. Why is the association of other saintly persons spoken of as the summum bonum, the highest perfection of life? Because when you're in amongst association of saintly persons, you almost haven't got to do anything. All you have to do is just be carried along. Go wherever they go, do whatever they do, sing whatever they sing, eat whatever they talk about, whatever they talk about. You're okay. You've got devotees to the front of you, devotees to the back of you, devotees to the right of you, devotees to the left of you. What can possibly go wrong? This terminology, front, back, side, is usually referred to in terms of warfare. Cannons to the right, cannons to the left, bomb bursts in front, bomb hit. Usually when we talk in these terms, we're talking about great jeopardy, great hazard, great danger. We're talking about being in imminent danger of you losing one's life. And yet just the opposite is true when you have devotees to the front of you, devotees to the back, devotees to the right, devotees to the left. What can go wrong? How can you go wrong? Akshnofalam Tadisha, Darshan Hi, Tanofalam Tadisha Gatasham, Jivafalam Tadisha, Kirtanam Hi, Sudurabhava Bhagati Loke. Sudurabhava means very rarely achieved. It's not so common. In a materialistic world to which everyone comes because of a sense of rebellion against God, souls that come to this material world do so, they dive out of the spiritual world in order to get stuck in the muck of sense gratification. It's like the prison house. You can't expect any good association in the prison. People end up in the prison house because of their criminal mentality. Nobody goes to the prison house for a vacation or for a special recreational weekend. Prison house is not Club Med. It's not a reward for good behavior. It's a punishment for bad behavior. And so this material world is like a prison house compared to the spiritual world, where those who have aberrant, criminal, deviant mentality go to be punished or hopefully rectified. So you cannot find very commonly sadhu sang, saintly association, in the material world. It's the rule. It's the rule in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, you can't find bad association. In the material world, it's just the opposite. You can't find good association. And if you do, don't be cavalier about it. Latch onto it. It's your life raft. Back to home, back to Godhead. We came to Utah in 1980. We worked hard, and Krishna blessed us with radio station, temples, Salt Lake City, Spanish Fork, big festivals. But really, we're missing the key element. We're missing the most important thing for 42 years. Very little association of devotees. Utah is not exactly on the highway. I mean, it is on the highway of I-15, but it's not, I don't know, it's not an intersection like Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. When I was in Los Angeles Temple for 10 years, we were always getting travelers drop in from all over the world. Scholars, pub authors, sannyasis, gurus, other temple presidents. It was almost a weekly affair to have a guest speaker. Here it's an annual affair when we have a guest speaker until such time as Indradu Maharaj blessed us with the sadhu sang. So in one fell swoop, after 42, what you would call lean years in terms of sadhu sang, lean years, it's getting one or two advanced devotees per year, and they wouldn't stay very long because in Spanish Fork we didn't have much of a congregation. You know, a preacher who's used to speaking to hundreds of people on a daily basis comes to Spanish Fork, and we have a program for him during the week, and 4 people show up, and on Sunday 30 people show up. Imagine the preacher doesn't stay longer because he figures his talents can be best used elsewhere. Salt Lake is not the case. Salt Lake now, because of the presence of Salt Lake and the numbers of people that we attract in Salt Lake. Just recently on a Monday night, we celebrated the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We had 150 people. So we are now a stop-off point for Chaitanya Charan, for Radhika Raman, and for others, much more so than we'd ever been in the past. But speaking of the years from 80 to 19 to 2022, there was a very lean, very few and far between were the devotees, truly advanced devotees who would give us the benefit of their association. But in one fell swoop, to make up for all of that, Krishna sent over that weekend 1,500 devotees from all over America. Some, like Prahlad, came from Australia. Madhava, I think, is originally from Fiji, perhaps. I may be wrong in that. Trinidad, I'm not sure. Devotees came from all over the country. There were 700 motel rooms booked in Spanish Fork and Prova. Krishna made up for any lacking in one weekend. He filled our tanks so we can now go for another 42 lean years and still be fired up, still be fueled for the future. And when I was asked to say a few words on stage, and I did really want to just keep it to a few words, I said 14 words. And I said, I wish that you all would repeat them to me. Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu Sangha, Sarvashata, Lava Mata, Sadhu Sangha, Sarvashata. There is no higher perfection of life. There's no better position than being amongst the sadhus. When there's sadhus surrounding you, 360, Krishna Tudiya, Akshno Phalam Tudiya. Akshno Phalam means Akshno means the eyes. Phalam means the fruit, the perfection of the eyes. Akshno phalam. Tvadiya Krishna darshanam. The perfection of the eyes is to see other devotees of Krishna. Tanu phalam tvadiya gatra shangam. The perfection of association. We all want society, friendship, and love. So the perfection of sangha, association, is gatra sangha, is association of other devotees. If you're going to rub shoulders and breathe in the same air and share in the same consciousness and have interactions and conversations with somebody, then make it be devotees. If you're going to see others on a regular basis, let it be devotees. If you're going to converse and interact with others, make it to be devotees. And kirtanam tvadiya. Jiva, the tongue is very important. Of all the senses, the tongue is the one that's most difficult to control. And yet, in the association of devotees, it's very easy to control the tongue, because what do devotees do? They always do katha. They do katha. They do kirtan and they do katha. The perfection of the tongue is to chant Hare Krishna. Afterwards, after some chanting, you get tired. Your energy level drops a little bit. You need a caloric top up. So take prasadam. Take prasadam, and automatically everything's adjusted. I think it was when Krishna went down to visit Bali Maharaj, he wanted to find the 6 sons of Sandipani Muni in order to retrieve them. They had gone down to the planet where Bali Maharaj was residing. Bali Maharaj asked Krishna for the benediction. Let's see if I can remember it. He said, oh yeah. Namostu ste dhyatma gunatma gunamite. Namostu te dhyatma gunatma gunamite. Bali Maharaj said, let me always go and associate amongst those who gunatma gunatmanam, who always speak enthusiastically and with great realization about gunatmanam, the possessor, the origin of all good qualities. Krishna is called Ganatmanam. He has all transcendental qualities. It is said Krishna has no material qualities, and so the impersonalists misunderstand the statement to mean that Krishna has no qualities. That Krishna has no material qualities does not mean that Krishna has no qualities. It just means what it says. He has no material quality, but he has Ganatmana. He has more spiritual qualities than there are grains of sand on this beach, than there are stars in the sky, than there are molecules in the universe. He is Gunatmana. He's the reservoir of unlimited transcendental qualities. And Bali Maharaj prays, let me get the association of those whose business is to describe the unlimited qualities of the Lord. Namostate Yatmanam Adatmana Shratmanam Vibhakta Mritavye. On the other hand, those, let me not be so unfortunate as to come into the association of those who vibhakta, who are without devotional service and therefore bound up by the ropes of the Lord of Death. Those who are glorifying the qualities of the Lord are liberated. Those who are glorifying the qualities of a sports icon or a movie celebrity, they are considered to be bound up by the ropes of death. See, he says that kanana kanana lingamayashe shan mayasha. He says, Lord, you appear within this universe, and simultaneously you cover yourself, you cover your real identity from the eyes of those skeptic, non-believing sense gratifiers. And while you simultaneously keep yourself veiled from the vision of the non-devotees, simultaneously you reveal yourself as the source of all transcendental qualities to your devotees. You appear in this world in your caused form. You appear as if it were in a material body, which is visible to the eyes of people in general, whether they be qualified devotionally or not. You give the vision of your form to everyone, regardless of their eligibility or qualifications. And yet even seeing your form without a heart saturated, surcharged with love, one cannot see Krishna as the Supreme Personality of God. And when Krishna entered into the arena of Kamsa prior to the wrestling match, he was seen by the materialists as a source of Brahman, by the impersonalists as the source of the Brahma Jyoti. He was seen by Kamsa as his worst enemy. Kamsa envied Krishna. The women saw Krishna as the most lovable object. The older people saw Krishna as a tender youth. How could they send this 16-year-old youth to fight against vicious, lethal wrestlers like Chanur and Mastika? Everybody saw Krishna differently, and only the devotees whose eyes were tinged with the salve of love saw him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Bali Maharaj says that Krishna simultaneously appears, as he appears shrouded and invisible to the, his supreme nature is invisible to the materialist. At the same time, he reveals himself with the same energy that he covers himself to the materialist. He opens himself up to the devotees. Similarly, he has his caused body, his material body, and at the same time, he has his causeless body also as Sri Krishna. Jopishana Vyadman Bhutanam Pragyatim Shambhadish Shambhavyamyanarayam. He has a body which appears to be material. It's fixed in time and place and in historical archival records. It walked Krishna's form, you might say caused form, walked the earth 5,000 years ago. But this is a material version of the original spiritual form of Krishna. So simultaneously, those who are without devotion saw Krishna as an ordinary man or an extraordinary man. And those who had devotion saw Krishna as none other than the Supreme Personality of God had descended from the spiritual world in order to distribute his mercy to the fallen conditioned souls. So how to focus on that transcendental nature of Krishna, who is the source of everything, not to be deluded by that Krishna who appears within his own material energy. The example is given in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, Yata Shayana Purusha. Shayana means sleep. Yata Shayana Purusham. Eta Manya Maya. When someone goes to sleep from their mind, Eta Mana Maya, they spin out a dream. Their mind creates a dream sequence, and that dream is populated with all kinds of characters. There's a location, there's a geographical, everything comes as a result of the mind. And then one sees oneself in that dream. Even though on one level you're just lying comfortably in your bed in Spanish Fork, during the dream sequence, you're unaware of yourself in Spanish Fork, and you're totally involved in and absorbed in the scenes in the dream. So Krishna is like someone who's sleeping, he's dreaming, he enters into his dream, and he acts a role in the dream. At the same time, he's not part of the dream at all. So Krishna is compared to that person who dreams this whole cosmic manifestation. He dreams the whole Mahat Tattva, which is several billions of miles in diameter and contains multiple suns, multiple universes, innumerable planets. This whole cosmic, gigantic manifestation, which is beyond the power of our mind to comprehend, is like the dream, the temporary dream, which is spun out of the consciousness of Krishna, and then Krishna enters into his own dream. So we shouldn't think that because Krishna has entered into his own dream, he is also a product of the dream, that just as the dream is phantasmagoria, and all of the characters in the dream are temporary and phantasmagoria and transitory, we should not paint Krishna with that same brush. Yes, Krishna has appeared within the dream, but he is not part of the dream. He is not transitory. He is not temporary. He is the source of the entire material and material spiritual creations. And he's entered into the dream, not as a temporary apparition, not as phantasmagoria, but he has entered into the dream in his original Ajo Pishan, unborn, eternal, spiritual body for the purpose of canvassing, bringing souls back home, back to God. But those who are without devotion, without a spiritual master, without the culture of devotional service, the culture of bhakti, will simply take Krishna as one of the many transitory, ephemeral elements of the dream. And they'll never understand the uniqueness, the separateness, the incredible power of Krishna to deliver us from all of the miseries of material life. So Prabhupada says here that what enables this vision, what empowers us to see Krishna for who he is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Just as you should never mistake Krishna for a mundaner, you should never mistake ISKCON for an ordinary institution. You go over the internet and there are all kinds of people who use language and use indexes to describe ISKCON in terms of its shortcomings and its faults. Yes, in this material world, you won't have to look very hard to find faults. Krishna himself says that every endeavor in this material world is covered by some sort of fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. But he also says that the moon has spots, and yet those spots do not detract from the benefits that the moon provides. So just as you should never mistake Krishna for an ordinary historical personality, you should never mistake Prabhupada's mechanism, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, for an ordinary spiritual institution. If you simply fault find and pick up the faults and look for the smoke, then you'll miss the fire. You'll totally miss the opportunity to associate with the members of ISKCON, to be able to focus and to be able to discern the difference between Maya Krishna and the real Krishna, make your life successful and go back home, back to God. So this is a statement that we find. I believe this is from the Back to Godhead, where Prabhupada says, without this sort of association that centers of Krishna consciousness will provide, it's very difficult to maintain the high standards required for spiritual perfection in a world given over largely to material sense gratification, garbed occasionally, it is true, in the hypocrite's croak of ritualistic or traditional religion. So how many people who distance themselves from ISKCON, present themselves as holier than thou, cloak themselves in the hypocrite's cloak of ritualistic or traditional religion, may even be chanting 16 or maybe more rounds, but who are at the heart of it hypocrites, because without the association that the International Society for Krishna Consciousness can provide, to think that you can make spiritual advancement on your own is a grand illusion. Prabhupada, the pure devotee, specifically gave his life's blood in establishing ISKCON. He said, ISKCON is my heart, so that like-minded spiritualists can come together and glean strength from numbers. We have this romantic vision. It's interesting because just recently, Hindu Duma Maharaj organized a kirtan in Rishikesh. Rishikesh is the headquarters. It's the breeding ground for impersonalistic, Mayavadic yogis. All the Mayavad yogis have been trained up or spend time or have their ashrams in Rishikesh. You won't hardly find a better stronghold for impersonalism, for monism than in Rishikesh. And yet when the devotees came to Rishikesh recently and hired a big hall and invited everyone for kirtan, you see so many of the yogis assembled there with huge grins ear to ear, their arms in the air, chanting and dancing. Obviously, so grateful to the devotees for having come there and delivered them from their sterile, dry practice of trying to become one with God. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was such an impersonalist. He saw the living being and the Lord as one. He did not see the difference between the Lord and his part and parcels, and therefore the possibilities for love and reciprocity were not evident to him until such time as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu blessed him with that sort of a vision, blessed him with his association. Then Sarvabhauma described himself, he self-described himself. He said, when I was an impersonalist, he said, I was eating dry cakes with no butter, with no oil. Can you imagine you make cookies and you don't put any margarine, you don't put any butter in the cookies? It's like eating dust. It's like eating chalk. It's the oil, it's the butter, it's the margarine that gives the cookies their pliability, their chewiness, their taste. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he said that before I got the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before Lord Chaitanya opened up to me the panoramic view of relational bhakti yoga, thinking myself to become one with God, I was just eating like dry cakes. Now I've got the oil, now I've got the bliss, now I've got the juice of life. And another elderly person who was a peer of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, they were about the same age physically, was Advaitacharya. They were all white-haired senior members of the Vaishnava society, very distinguished. All the junior, the younger devotees would offer them respect, treat them like their grandfathers. And on one occasion, these two extremely revered senior members of the Vaishnava society of those days were taking bath in the Ganges River, and they were having a water fight, and they were laughing, hysterically carrying on like 12-year-olds. And someone remarked, might have been Lord Chaitanya, just see how staid and dry and uninteresting and dull they were before, and now they're just so jubilant, they're so happy in Krishna consciousness, in bhakti. Unfortunately, in the Western countries, we have this romantic vision to be a solitary spiritual practitioner. And yet, if we take the advice, the counsel of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll see there are countless tales of such solitary practitioners succumbing to wealth, women, and retreating from the spiritual path. Prabhupada says in one beautifully written sentence in a purport, he says, wealth and women have been the stumbling blocks whereby many stalwarts have stepped back, have retreated from the devotional path. Think of, for instance, Subari Muni. Subari Muni was so advanced in yoga and oneness, monism, and impersonalism. He had his senses so much under control, at least apparently, that he meditated underwater for many, 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 many years. Nakuriyat karichit sakyam manashi yadvisharam chashkandata ba'aishvaram. And yet one time, upon seeing two of the principal fish copulating, these were fish with whom he developed some sort of a connection, a relationship. He resonated with them, and that resonation was so strong that when the fish copulated, then he felt lust arise for the first time in many, many years within himself. So he got out of the water. He went to King Mandata and asked for one of his 50 daughters in marriage. You can imagine, having been in the water for many years, he was elderly, he was all wrinkled up like a prune, very uncomely, very unattractive, not a young girl's dream of an ideal husband. So King Mandata really didn't want to give any of his daughters to this dried up old sage. But kings are they know, they're expert in diplomacy. So he didn't want to say no for fear that the sage would curse him. So he said no in another way. He said, any one of my daughters who accepts you, you could have. And he was thinking in None of his daughters were attracted to this smelly, wrinkled up old guy. None of them will accept him. So intuiting what was going on, what the situation was, Subari Muni, then due to his yogic powers, transformed himself into a beautiful, handsome, comely young man. Mandata's strategy, diplomacy backfired. Not only did one, but all 50 of his daughters wanted to marry Subari Muni. So he left the water in order to get a wife and start a family, and ended up getting 50 wives. And due to his potency, his fecundity, you might say, he had 100 sons by each wife. So he went from living a renounced life in the water to having no less than 5,000 family members. Subari says, look at me. He says, look at me. I'm a textbook example. I'm a classic example of what not to do. If you're on the path of renunciation, if you've given up family, friends, and country in order to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then be very scrupulous in protecting your devotional creeper, and the way that you protect it is that you do not allow yourself to be in solitude. When you're in solitude, you are vulnerable. You are vulnerable. When you're amongst the devotees, you are invulnerable. There's a verse, Nityam Didati Kamasha Chiram Tanam Viram Yoginam Kritamaityasha Pumsam Jayava Pumshalati. The yogi who's meditating in solitude will be betrayed by his mind. In congregation, in association, the mind is automatically controlled. Your friends are devotees, your partners are devotees, people with whom you have a conversation are devotees, people that you sit down and have a meal with are devotees, people that you sing and dance with are devotees, people that you sleep next to at night are devotees. There is no scope for the mind to get out of control. But when you're doing solitary meditation, as Subari Muni was, and many other impersonalists, the mind is your worst enemy. Nityam Didati Kamasha, the example is given that a woman who is faithless to her husband will go out in secret and she'll get some lovers unknown to her husband. She'll make connections with other men. And in making connections with other men, those men become attached to her. And then she's so expert in making them attached to her to the degree that they want to get rid of the husband so that they can enjoy her openly. They come to want to enjoy her openly. It's not enough for them to enjoy her once in a while when she sneaks out unbeknownst to her husband. They want her to move in with them. And to that end, those paramours will often conspire to kill the husband. In the same way, the yogi who practices in solitude, his mind is like that unfaithful wife. She will go behind his back. She will not be his friend. She will be his worst enemy. And she will conspire somehow or other to kill the fruits of his yogic practice. Therefore, the conclusion is that though it may seem romantic to be a solitary spiritual practitioner, all recommendations are against that. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastahai, Labha Mata Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shadihai. Seek first and foremost the association of devotees, because in that one endeavor, all perfection is possible. Finish with this brief story from Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya, one of his newer converts, came up to him. This man was all excited about his new religion, Krishna consciousness. He wanted to do something meaningful in order to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya. And so he suggested to Lord Chaitanya that he leave his wife, he'd leave his family, and he'd go traveling as a missionary, preach in foreign lands. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, you have to stay where you are. Don't change your circumstances. Don't change your dress. Don't change from married to single. Don't change your job. Just change your consciousness. So whatever you do it for Krishna. Seek out whenever and wherever possible the association of devotees. Be yourself a magnet for other people who are truth seekers. Perfect your life. Make your life successful by chanting, attending the classes, attending the kirtans, taking prasadam with the devotee, making friends with such devotees as there are in your area, becoming a devotee yourself, and then by your example, making other people devotees. What is required is a change of consciousness, not a change of vocation, not a change of marital status. Just make your life successful, and then automatically you will be like a touchstone for others. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thanks very much for being with us on this Wisdom Wednesday. As I said, we'll have a hiatus of a couple of weeks until not only do we have the Festival of Colors on the 25th and 26th of March, but then we need a week to recover and bounce back from it as well. We'll look forward to seeing some of you at the festival, like Anjali, coming in from Phoenix, as well as Krishanto, Dishe, Bali, Rico is coming from Florida. We've got our junior Miranda locally. Akanksha is coming from Los Angeles. Malini is coming from New York. Janardhan is coming from Las Vegas. Nora and Daniel are coming from Argentina, I believe it is, all the way from Argentina. They're coming as the Samadhi vibration couple. It's going to be a great event. Pray that the weather be at least tolerable, at least not intolerable. Everything's in Krishna's hands. That's our process. And so there's no better opportunity than to trust in Krishna. And when you have a major festival organized for the last week in March, the weather in Utah is unpredictable at best. March, you're really, really putting your faith and your trust on the line. But the beautiful thing about March is there are no other competing festivals going on. We're the only game in town in March. It's often suggested, why don't you have the festival in June or July? Well, we do have a June festival in Salt Lake City, and we have a May festival in Ogden. But the real advantage of the festival in Salt Lake City is that there's no other competing events going on at the same time. So if you want to go to a special event, we're the only game in town. And so far, that formula has worked pretty well since 1995. So we'll see what happens here. Thank you for being with us, Jean, Brent, Govinda Dave, Bhai Bobby, Anjali, as well as Rob never got back. He saw a locked out message when he tried to log in, and I went and unlocked it, but apparently didn't notice that. So we won't have any of those pithy little takeaways today. This has been Wisdom Wednesday. Wish us well, wish us good luck for the 28th annual Festival of Colors coming up in what? 10 days time, 9 days time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.